You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. A large part of our suffering is entirely self-inflicted. It is the quiet frustration of knowing you are capable of more, while your attention is scattered across 100 different places. Every day offers opportunities to move forward. Yet, many spend their lives watching, reacting, consuming, and waiting. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for motivation. Waiting for certainty. But life keeps moving while you stand still. The Stoics understood a timeless truth: before discipline grows, excuses must be confronted. Before confidence appears, self-respect must be earned. Strength is found less in what you start doing, and more on what you finally choose to stop doing.
Welcome to True Stoic Journal, the path to inner control.
Someone disrespects you in front of other people. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts speed up. You can feel the anger rising before a single word leaves your mouth. Every instinct pushes you toward the same reaction: defend yourself, raise your voice, and prove that your silence is not weakness. But the moment another person gains control over your emotions, they gain influence over your mind. That is the part most people never stop to consider. They spend years believing anger is strength, when in reality, uncontrolled anger is a total surrender. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world turned emotional reactivity into entertainment. Most people do not realize how much of their inner peace depends entirely on external behavior. One careless comment ruins an entire evening. One moment of disrespect replays in the mind for years. One dismissive tone from a colleague poisons your night. This happens not because the event itself was inherently powerful, but because the mind gave it a permanent place to live. That is how emotional dependence quietly forms. The outside world enters the mind and begins shaping thoughts, moods, and reactions without resistance. Over time, people stop governing themselves and start living at the mercy of whatever happens around them. The Stoics warned about this constantly because a person who cannot govern their inner world will always remain highly vulnerable to the outer one. Real strength has never been loud. It has never belonged to the person who reacts first, speaks the most, or loses control the fastest. Real strength is quieter than that. It is the ability to remain steady while chaos unfolds around you, to stay clear while others become emotional, and to hear criticism without collapsing into anger or insecurity. Most emotional suffering begins the moment the outside world gains unrestricted access to your mind. This vulnerability feels uncomfortable to confront because it removes the convenient illusion that anger simply happens automatically. But anger rarely arrives all at once. It begins entirely with interpretation. Within seconds, another person has influenced your entire internal state without ever touching you. Society encourages this, often praising people for losing control while mistaking calmness for weakness. The loudest person in the room is treated as passionate and authentic, while the composed person is called detached or cold. Yet noise has never been proof of strength. It is evidence of a mind that has lost its balance. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. Yet, most people spend years allowing negative experiences to stain them without resistance. Criticism becomes part of their identity. Rejection becomes proof that they are unworthy. An embarrassing moment becomes a wound they continue reopening in private. Eventually, they stop responding to reality itself and start responding to old emotional wounds instead. The Stoics trained themselves to interrupt this process before emotional chaos fully formed. They understood that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the meaning attached to them. This is why two people can experience the same event and react completely differently. One becomes consumed by anger, while another remains calm. The external event remained identical, the difference existed entirely in perception. Emotional discipline begins the moment observation becomes stronger than impulse. When you widen the space between an event and your reaction, disrespect ceases to feel automatically personal. Criticism stops feeling like a threat to your identity. This profound calmness completely unsettles emotional people. They expect intensity. They expect a reaction. They expect visible emotional movement. But composure creates an immediate uncertainty, and uncertainty completely disrupts their emotional control. A calm person becomes impossible to manipulate because they are no longer responding automatically to every emotional trigger. One of the hardest truths to accept is that most people are simply projecting their inner chaos onto everyone around them. The angry person usually carries frustration that existed long before the conversation even began. The disrespectful person is often trying to reclaim a sense of power they feel is missing somewhere else in their life. The hypercritical person is routinely revealing more about their own insecurities than the person standing in front of them. Once your perception shifts in this direction, observations quietly replace emotional impulse. A rude comment no longer feels like undeniable proof that you were attacked personally, it begins looking more like glaring evidence of someone else's internal instability. The moment you stop demanding perfection from imperfect people, emotional resistance begins fading naturally. Acceptance removes friction, not approval. One of the clearest differences between emotionally reactive people and emotionally disciplined people is the way they experience time. Emotionally, people live entirely inside the immediate moment. They want relief, revenge, and validation without a single second of delay. Their decisions are consistently shaped by whatever feeling happens to be strongest at that particular microsecond. Anger pushes them to speak before thinking. Pride pushes them to defend themselves before understanding the situation clearly. Frustration pushes them toward impulsive action because silence feels completely unbearable. Yet, the desperate need for immediate emotional release often creates consequences that last far longer than the original emotion itself. One reckless sentence spoken in anger can permanently damage trust built over decades. One impulsive reaction can alter how people see your character for the rest of your life. The Stoics believed discipline was not simply about controlling behavior in the present moment, it was about protecting your future from the instability of your present mind. That requires patience, and patience has become increasingly rare in a modern culture that rewards immediacy. Waiting feels uncomfortable because it forces you to sit with an emotion instead of discharging it immediately. Yet emotional urgency is the very thing that systematically destroys mental clarity. Calm people operate differently because they are not controlled by emotional timing. They understand that not every feeling deserves immediate expression. They treat every disagreement not as a battle to be won, but as a situation to be navigated. By the end of the day, profound exhaustion appears in others, not because life itself was unbearable, but because their emotional energy was entirely spent reacting to every unpleasant experience. Calm people conserve their energy through selective attention. They understand that attention is finite, and where attention goes, emotional energy inevitably follows. Instead of emotionally attaching themselves to every passing conflict, they become intensely selective. They choose carefully what deserves their focus and what does not. This is not avoidance, it is deep discernment. Seneca once wrote that he who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary. When you stop feeding conflict with endless emotional attention, the conflict naturally shrinks. Over time, this practice changes your nervous system itself. The constant emotional stimulation that once felt normal starts feeling completely unnecessary and exhausting. Silence becomes immensely more comfortable, and solitude becomes deeply restorative. Emotional discipline removes this chaos because it teaches the mind to stop treating every minor irritation like a state of emergency. Difficult moments will still arrive, frustration will still appear, and anger will still enter the mind occasionally because emotion is an inescapable part of being human. The profound difference is that emotions stop controlling your direction completely. They become experiences to observe rather than commands to obey automatically. Eventually, emotional restraint stops feeling forced and starts feeling entirely natural. The mind becomes quieter because it is no longer wasting its precious energy reacting to every disturbance surrounding it. Your identity no longer depends entirely on outside recognition, and something far steadier takes its place. The Stoics never promised a life completely free from frustration or conflict because they knew external reality could never be perfectly controlled. Their focus was always directed strictly inward. They believed the real goal was not removing difficulty from life, but removing the unnecessary suffering created by uncontrolled reactions. This transformation happens gradually through repeated, small moments of awareness. You notice anger appearing, but you choose silence. You feel insecurity rising, but you refuse to let it dictate your vocabulary. You observe frustration cleanly without becoming consumed by it. At first, these moments require immense effort because emotional habits built over a lifetime do not disappear instantly. Breaking that pattern takes patience. Yet, with enough repetition, the mind slowly becomes quieter. Reactions slow down. Thoughts become clearer. Emotional turbulence loses its authority. Eventually, this calmness becomes fully visible even without explanation. There is less tension in the way you carry yourself, less desperation in your conversations, and less urgency in your conflicts. You can listen without appearing threatened, remaining steady during situations that completely overwhelm others. The powerful part is that this calmness does not come from controlling other people, it comes from no longer needing to control them in order to feel stable internally. True composure reflects a mind that no longer needs the world to cooperate perfectly to remain whole internally. The world will keep testing your patience. People will continue projecting their chaos onto anyone willing to carry them. But the moment you stop allowing the outside world to dictate your inner state, something changes permanently. You move differently, you think differently, and you become fundamentally harder to shake. If this message stayed with you, take a moment and watch one of the videos on your screen right now. Keep strengthening the mind, keep building that inner stability, and stop searching for outside validation. If you found this video valuable, please be sure to like it, share it with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe to True Stoic Journal so that life-changing insights like these continue to reach you. Until next time, protect your peace, remain centered, and thank you for being part of this journey.